Hey everybody, Caleb here, and today we are continuing on in our Thoughts of a Gen Zer type series, and today we're talking about depression. I've had a few people ask me to make this video at one point or another, and so finally we're going to start the conversation on it. Can I just start off by making sure to say, I'm not an expert about these things. With the anxiety video that I did previously, which you haven't watched that one, check it out. We spoke on anxiety through the eyes of somebody within Generation Z, and that is something that I've dealt with in smaller bits throughout my life. Again, not at like a clinical level or anything like that, but I have had moments of anxiety. But when it comes to depression, this isn't something that I haven't really struggled with. It's not something that's a part of my story. And so I'm speaking about this. I'm not necessarily speaking to it or from experience with it. And so I want to make sure that is present and known before you start listening to this, thinking that I'm going to be giving you my personal story with it. I just want to talk about it, talk from some things that I've noticed within Generation Z from a lot of my friends who have dealt with this. And so we're going to dive in. We're going to talk on this, and we're going to see kind of what we can discover and find, and hopefully this either encourages you, enlightens you, or helps share some perspective if you're maybe not within Generation Z on the topic of depression. Now, when we look at Generation Z, it's anybody born between about 95 to 2012. That might expand based upon how kids who are getting older start to just kind of gel with society and the way they interact and think and all of that stuff. Now, when we look at what depression is defined in the dictionary by Mr. Merriam-Webster themselves. It is a state of feeling sad, ultimately dejection. So when we look at this, it's a state of feeling sad. I feel like most of my friends describe it to me as almost a state of sadness that responds to even just like the physical feeling of it. Like it's beyond just being sad for a moment. It is a weight being carried. At times, I think some of my friends, and maybe if you've been dealing with depression at times, the way you can kind of describe it is like you get to a point where you wish that weight was a physical weight on your chest. Like something that could be seen, because then you could at least go to somebody and say, hey, can you help me get this off my chest? And they could actually assist you and bear that burden with you. But sometimes it's so painful and so heavy that it's just there and you don't know what to do with it and nobody can see it and you don't know how to explain it. Now, when we look at depression then and we look at what it is, I just kind of Googled. Again, I'm not an expert on this. I'm not a researcher for this. But I looked up, I just said, why do people get depressed? What are some of the common reasons? Now it says, for some people, a negative, stressful, or unhappy family atmosphere can lead to depression. Other high-stress living situations such as poverty, homelessness, or violence can contribute to it. Dealing with bullying, harassment, or peer pressure leaves some people also feeling isolated, victimized, or insecure, which can lead to times of depression. Now, when we look at Generation Z, something I mentioned in the anxiety video also is we have so much connection to media, social media, information, snapshots of it. We're not a generation that necessarily reads full-on articles, so you might just see a headline and that's what you're stuck with. And I think that's partly what is able to contribute to this, because although you used to have life happen to you right where you're at, sometimes life is happening to people around the world, and now kids within Generation Z at the age of even like 10 are on an iPad seeing that happen, and they're having to process that with a 10-year-old mind. Like they're having to process it at an age far younger than what they were probably ever meant to. And so we look at this, we look at kids and people dealing with depression at younger ages, and for some of those, it is at the point of being like it's clinical depression. At some of those, it's people going through such hard circumstances that it's just like, man, they have that weight on their chest and they don't know how to deal with it. Now, here's kind of my takeaway. Here's my encouragement within this. Here's my thought on this for somebody within Generation Z. Maybe you're outside of Generation Z trying to understand why these people have it. One, again, like I mentioned in the anxiety video, don't just look at somebody and say, hey, you're not old enough to have enough to be depressed about, or you're not old enough to have enough to be anxious about. Like, that's just, it's not going to work. It's not considerate. It's not realizing the situation. For somebody who's going through this, take time to recognize and say, hey, why do you feel this way? Hey, can we talk through it? And they might not be able to, and that's okay, but having somebody actually show they care could be a huge step. If you deal with this in a major level, also, can I just say there's people in your corner that want to help you, reach out and get help. please, because there are people who love you and care about you and don't want you to have to be in this state forever. They want to help you take those steps. Now, from a faith side of this, I'm a Christian, I'm a youth pastor, I just love helping people realize more about Jesus. I'm a Jesus guy. And so as we look at this, I just want to also say, if you're within the church and you feel like there's nobody there for you, one, reach out to somebody and see if they actually are. If they're not, you might need to go find a different church, find a community of people, because if we're truly reflecting Jesus, then people who are in this season, we're going to help point them to joy. We're going to help them realize the Holy Spirit is their comforter. We're going to help them realize that Jesus cares about that weight you're carrying and He wants to carry it for you. Now, that also doesn't mean that you just look at somebody dealing with depression and just say, hey, well, like, the joy of the Lord be with you. Like, give Him all your burdens. Like, lay them down. Those are totally true, but when we make them a cliche that actually is just trying to look at somebody's circumstance and walk past it, it's not okay. And so be willing to have those conversations, because guess what? Jesus would have. Jesus is willing to sit down and have a conversation about these things. So as the church, we need to be willing to. And if you're somebody dealing with depression, you haven't had somebody reach out to you, I am sorry. But also, if you can have the courage and the boldness to, please step out, reach out, and have it where somebody can join in conversation with you, because you're not alone. There's people that want to help you. There's people here for you. So please, please, please do that. Now again, this is not something I have a lot of experience to speak from personally, and so I'm going to kind of end this video here. If you have comments on this, you have things on this, you have ideas on it, comment them down below so that we can continue to expand this. And even if you have things you want me to research on and look into, comment those down below. I'll do it. I'll make another video following up on this, but I don't have a lot of experience with this, so I don't want to go too far. But these are my thoughts as a Gen Zer on depression in just the smallest, littlest bit possible as a non-expert. And so thank you guys for checking this out. Comment those things down below. Like this video if it's helped share some perspective for you, or maybe it's just helped encourage you. It might help encourage others as they see it, to see that this is something where they're not alone. And then also subscribe to the channel. We got a lot more days left in this 60-day challenge, and so loving seeing your guys' support, so please continue to do it. It helps encourage me. Thank you guys so much. See you tomorrow.